Okay, so time to get to work. If you're not familiar with Canada's Music Incubator, what we do is we work with artists, independent artists, regardless of genre, from all across the country, and the topics we're going to cover today is something that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, so I'm going to try to lead a conversation here, and I think the logical place to start would be with Dre as the artist. So if we look across the panel here, you'll see Dre. He's going to probably give you what we would refer to as the brand perspective, right. Okay? And then Jonathan over here, think of him as the brand builder. But also he has the brand perspective being a singer-songwriter himself. We have Sabrina over there. She would be what we'd call our brand amplifier, working for a major broadcast chain. And then we have Eric on the far end. Think of him as your brand ambassador in terms of his role. Did I capture that correctly, guys? Do you agree with that? Okay, so Dre, let's start with you as the artist, and speaking with other artists in the room here. When it comes to establishing, identifying your brand, what were you thinking of? What were some of the challenges when you were starting out?
I think it's about, being true to yourself and actually it's about self-awareness, figuring out who you are. I mean, even when I first started working with Eric, we kind of talked about, who you are as an artist before even worrying about what's going to happen with the song. So I think that's first step, self-awareness.
Okay, so in my experience, one of the big challenges we have with artists is actually answering that who we are as artists question. So if you struggle with that, did you have struggles with that, Dre?
I feel like you're always changing as a person, so I feel like, yeah, but I think it's trial and error in terms of you try out something and you do your best to try and bring out yourself, and then, if it doesn't work, you adjust and you continue.
Okay, now Eric, you're meeting with a lot of artists. From your perspective, what are you looking for in terms of artists and their own self-brand awareness?
I'm looking for great songs, to tell you the truth. Don't get weirded out by this word brand. A brand is something that you think that you can control, but you really can't. Your audience will dictate what your brand is. If you go and be who you are online or on stage, that's you. That's you. The biggest question that I always get from anybody is well, what should I post on social media? And what should I do? Because I'm running out of ideas. And the fact is, though, that your worst day as a musician is better than most people's best day ever. You get to play music for a living. How fucking cool is that? You get to go in different cities and be a tourist in different cities. And you get to hang out with really cool people, regardless if it's your average person on the street. You get to talk to people who love talking to you, who see themselves in your songs. You're holding up a mirror to them, much like how somebody like Gordon Downey from The Hip did so well. So realistically, your brand is you. You don't have to compete with being IBM or Taylor Swift. You do, because we're all going after the exact same eyes and ears as the Beatles or Taylor Swift or Metallica. Because once you get your music up on Spotify, you are in competition with 45.5 million songs that are already up there. Your brand is just what attracts somebody to you. Think about it. Think about your favorite artist of all time. Shout one out. Who's your favorite artist of all time? Yeah, of all time. No, it's not a big question. Who's the first artist? Who, if they came, you would be I would pay $1,000 for that ticket? Rush. Okay. Who said Rush? You said Rush. Okay. You probably know a lot about Geddy Lee. You probably know about Alex Lifeson. You probably know about Neil Peart. You probably know about Neil Peart's family situation and his wife, or maybe his daughter. Maybe you read the book. You know that Geddy is a sports fan. You see him behind home plate at the Blue Jay game, looking so cool with the sunglasses, looking so nice. That's his brand. His brand is he's a bassist and a baseball fan. Those are some of the things that you reveal to your audience. If you're an animal lover, go to the Hamilton Animal Shelter for a day and donate your time. Donate blankets. Ask your fan to donate blankets. That's your brand. Your brand is whoever you are. If you're
okay, Eric, that's it.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but at some point when you're running a business and you're trying to attract partners, there has to be some consideration in terms of what you're doing, knowing who you are in order to inform the marketing activities. And just hang on a sec. I want to get Jonathan in here. So Jonathan, can you I'd like you to jump in here from the outside, speaking from your brand perspective, not the artist perspective. I know in our experience, what I see a lot from young artists or independent artists is that they're in a rush to go out there and they're starting to market and they're marketing, but they're not really understanding who they are. They haven't answered that question because a lot of that brand identity comes from a process, kind of asking yourself some questions, which informs the marketing activities which you're going to undertake. So Jonathan, speak, if you could, to kind of that process. So if somebody is struggling with kind of, okay, who do I want to be? How do I want to represent myself? What are the steps that you would take as a brand builder?
Well, it's kind of twofold. The first thing is you obviously have to look at what type of artist you are, and even do some market research. It's as simple as keeping track of when you're doing shows, like who's coming out to your shows, and building out like, hey, I'm noticing that there is this certain age demographic that is coming out to my shows, and then combining that with being realistic about what your music sounds like, who you sound like, and then start building profiles off of that. So I think it's twofold. You have to know who you are as an artist, see who you're actually attracting, then also figure out who you sound like or what your music sounds like, and figuring out who they're going after, and then being able to marry those two in a way to figure out how to get to them. So, and that essentially comes down to targeting and figuring out who that is, so you know who to run your ads to, who you know who to market to. So it does take a little bit of that outside perspective of figuring out where you want to go, but also at the same time knowing who you are. So you have to marry those two. And that's usually the kind of reality that you're
Okay, so let's get Sabrina into the conversation if we could. So you're seeing all this music coming into you as a music director. So you're filtering it, whether it's physical or it's coming in digital. When music is coming across your desk or through your computer, how important to you, or do you look for things like the marketing connected to the branding, et cetera? Like, what do you see?
It always kind of comes down to like how that music gets to us. Like, are you sending it on a disc? Are you sending it in a USB? Are you Instagram messaging a jock, hoping that they'll pass it on to somebody for you? The way that you package it and put it together says a lot about you, right? And kind of what Eric said about your brand and who you are. So package it to who you are, like not what you think we want to see, because guaranteed it goes to the right desk. It's just if it gets listened to, if it looks like something that should be taken out of the package, even in an email, if it's short and sweet and simply enough, like you just want feedback, or like, can this get on the radio? Are we going to listen to it? So I think it kind of comes down to putting it into that package that you believe in and you feel firmly represents who you are.
Okay. By the way, again, questions anytime, feel free to interject. Dre, you want to say something?
No, I was just going to say, even when you're promoting a single or something, though, at least for me, it was really important to not just sell, you know what I mean? Not always just be talking about the single and doing things music related. I found it really beneficial to do, just random fun things. Like when I was about to promote my single, the Starbucks Unicorn Frappuccino came out. And I decided I kind of like, what's it called? Face masks. So I was like, I'm just gonna put this on my face and videotape it and see what a reaction is, And sometimes I think people are afraid and they take themselves too seriously, but it's like, it's just fun. And sometimes things like that could be something to attract a completely new audience.
But if you were playing music like Nick Cave, or if you were playing really depressing, soft music like Leonard Cohen, and when you get the music, no matter how you get it, the first thing you're going to do, realistically, if I found you, would be to go to your Instagram, to go to your Twitter, to go to your Facebook, to go to your website. If it doesn't connect with what I just saw,
true,
then there's not going to be that I don't care how great the song is mentality, but you're not talking about music online. You're not promoting your song. If I found something that if somebody sent me music to do PR with, or the record label side of things, and I see that the last post that they did was 4 months ago, I'm going to question how serious they are about it. So the branding really is also how you are online and the online persona that you are projecting, because it's almost parlaying it into something else. When you posted that Starbucks thing, I think the way that it worked for you was people saw, oh, he's playing pop music. Yeah. And he's fun, and he doesn't take himself too seriously, because that was what you were projecting.
Yeah, and I also think that, my audience is definitely Starbucks drinking kind of audience sort of thing, you know? So it does have to work, so. Yeah, I suppose if I was doing depressing music, people might be like.
But let me ask you this, Drew. How do you know your audience is a Starbucks drinking audience? And this goes to kind of the whole question of identifying your target audience, which is a big question that artists in Canada have to answer, especially if you want to get factor funding. One of the most important things that they are looking for in that application when you're going for a juried sound grant is that ability to identify and explain your target audience. Well, how have you gone about figuring out that they're Starbucks drinkers, among other things?
Well, I feel like the simple answer is online analytics. It really, with Facebook and Instagram, it really tells you, you know, the age range of these people. And I do take the time to, you know, look at my followers and see what they're posting and engage with them. I think consistent engagement, taking the time to comment, look at their pictures and see like, hey, what are they interested in? I think that's important too. Eric, what do you?
Yeah, but it's also like Starbucks is an easy target. If you did that with Tim's, the perception would be something different. If you splash Tim's coffee on your face, it wouldn't be as funny as Starbucks unicorn frappuccino, which just had this elitist think about it anyway. And I love Starbucks. If anybody from Starbucks, I'm completely open to doing influencer campaigns.
I'm drinking it, right?
but you know what I mean, right? Like Tim Hortons is like a working person's coffee.
It's a Hamilton coffee. Be careful. Be careful. Be careful. Jonathan, is there anything you would suggest to independent artists in terms of trying to frame and identify their target audience above and beyond the analytics you can get on the back end of the social media platforms?
Well, I think it sometimes, like, at the end of the day, no matter what, as an independent artist, you are a small business. So you have to think about what's going to work for your business. So what I like to do that is actually a little bit outside of the online view, and sometimes it's a little bit overkill, but I think it's a really good exercise, is you figure out who your target market is, or maybe your potential target market, and then you walk them through what is called a customer journey. So there's usually 4 steps to that. The first step is how do they become aware of you, or what are maybe the touch points, whether it is physical touch points, like they see you at a show, or whether it's online. And then moving them to the next thing about, when they start researching about you, like when they look at your socials and things like that. And then moving them on towards that. And then the third step is, let's say, like, which is usually called like the purchase phase, which is for you would be when they buy an album or when they come out to a show. And then afterwards it'd be the post-purchase phase, like how are you following up with them and things like that. So it's a pretty universal business principle of being able to figure out who your potential audience is, or if you know who your audience is, then work out that journey with them, and then figure out where you can interact with them during those touch points. And even walking through that exercise will help you figure out new marketing things that you can do and better ways to, facilitate your customers or your fans. So I'd say that's a really good way outside of just the analytics and things like that, is applying those general business principles that will really help you figure out and get in the mindset of your target audience.
I did see a question on the front row. Just your name, please, and your question, and who's for?
Change your music for Jonathan in relation to what you just talked about with the touch points.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get on Spotify playlists, and how do you incorporate all those touch points?
Well, I think with the Spotify playlist, and I think Eric will probably have a little bit more to do with that. So, Eric.
Okay.
I can speak to it if you want, but
and then
go
I
ahead,
can.
Eric.
Yeah,
I'll go off
the real easy way is you just create the best song possible, and with that you cross your fingers and hope that the universe unfolds as it should, with people sharing it as much as possible, and somehow it gets to the influencers. From the outside looking in, that's how you do it. There are different ways of how you can do it now, which is you can pay people to go promote yourself to those playlists. Most of those people that have substantial and influential playlists usually have a blog, and then people like me go after those blogs, and if they like the music, or they do a review, or they post your video, I always ask if they have a Spotify playlist, and a lot of them do, and I ask to see if they can put your song on there. A lot of the times, the last dozen or 2 dozen successes that we've had in terms of Spotify playlisting has just been from the initiative of other people. In the beginning, when Spotify first started, you could actually send these people a message, but everybody abused that system so badly that they deleted that mechanism. So you can't even reach out to people. You just have to do some detective work and find them. But now, there's talk that the major labels have that pretty much wrapped up through their own source of payola, just like everything else does. So really, you just gotta hope that if you create an amazing song and the buzz starts to happen, whether it's on YouTube or whether it's on radio, people will add it to their playlist because it makes them feel good knowing that they're adding something great to their playlist. I wish I had a really easy answer.
There's no easy answer to that, Eric. And the reality for all of you as independent artists, if that is your objective, and I'll be outside afterwards. I don't really want to take up the time. The panel is here to talk, but really it's going to be through organic growth. And don't just think about the playlist, but I was reading something recently where it's getting added to people's collections. That's where most of the plays are coming from Spotify or Apple Music and Google Play. And part of your marketing tactics should be to push people to each of those streaming platforms. That's what I would suggest.
Yeah, one other way is that if you're an artist, create your own playlist. Do, songs for your Friday, do songs that you love, do songs that influenced your album or your EP, songs that you grew up on, the biggest hits of your life. It doesn't have to be the most popular songs of those artists, but songs that mean something to you, and stick your song at number 4. And your audience will go to that. And if you do it on a consistent basis, say Friday at noon, you're going to release another 10 songs on a Spotify playlist, but your music is on there. That's also how you can just keep getting the music out there, using the music of other artists to get people in, but then your song is number 3 or number 4.
Eric's right. Consider it as another social platform that you should be engaged with. Now let's get back to Sabrina here. I want to go back to the target audience if we could. Because you have to make decisions, because you have a target audience as a radio station for Virgin 99. Let's maybe take that as an example.
Yeah.
And when you're hearing music, you're listening with that in mind, are you not?
Yeah, okay, so I love sad songs. Depressing music, like that is all me, like I'm all in. And I love going to like the Opera House and the Mod Club where there's only, like they don't even fill it. Like those are my favorite artists. But working for Virgin Radio, it's like Miley Cyrus and it's Post Malone and it's those artists. And that's like a hard thing to wrap your head around because our target audience is 18 to 34, female, maxing out her credit card, out on King Street, partying every night. Like that is our target. And that's the music that we're playing. It doesn't matter that I like sad songs. Like I don't get to put sad songs on the radio. We don't get to make those decisions. So when you're sending in your music, it's like, you gotta hope for feedback. Like you hope that somebody listens to it, that they'll write back to you, that they'll give you some advice. But you gotta also, being realistic about radio is not like cross your fingers that it's gonna be on the log the next day, because it's not going to be. But that's like one of the best things and a lot of music directors will, like they'll sit down and they will listen to your music and they will give you feedback. And that's like almost like the best thing to hope for.
We have a question out there. Please stand up and say your name, please.
Anthony, this is a question for Sabrina. I was wondering if you could give 5 tips as to what maybe you guys look for when doing radio music.
Yeah, so I think just as Eric said, is like make the best song that you can make. Like if you make a song and you're like, this is like, and you made it for Virgin Radio, like that's how strongly you feel about it. That's the best you can do. Right? And then start marketing it and then getting the numbers on it. And as Dre said with his single, like he had influencers on it and it's like even if you have to, I hate to say it, but even if you have to pay people to like get your music out there for you, sometimes that's just what you have to do. And if you believe in it, that shouldn't be a problem for you, because if people are gonna hear it and then it gets to the right audience, you're getting exactly what you wanted. That's kind of like my best tip, but also to not send in your music because you don't think it's going to get played. Send in your music because you never know what's going to come out of that.
And strategically, Eric, I would say, on your end, as a publicist, when you're going to go to a radio station like a Virgin 99, it's not as simply as just sending the music. And Eric would know as a PR person, he needs to build a story. Right, so can you maybe speak to developing your own story, Eric, in terms of attracting commercial radio play, streaming playlists, attracting partners in the music industry, how important that is?
Yeah. Usually when I get music, I always try to answer the question myself, which why are they going to play you? And you'll say, well, because I'm great. And they say, yeah, but like Virgin's got Taylor Swift, who's great. So why are they going to play you? He says, well, because you're Canadian. I said, yeah, but they got Bare Naked Ladies for that. So why are they going to play you? And you keep going down the entire 136 reasons why radio stations will tell you no. And sometimes it just comes down to, because it's a great song and it's the messenger. It's somebody telling them that I know what, you know your station better than anybody else here in the room, but I think it may have a fit. And
Yeah.
sometimes you go to, like, I don't usually handle radio tracking, but I go after every single radio station. And what I do is I hit up the 7 or 8 radio trackers whose day, every day, is to contact 150 radio stations saying, can you play it, can you play it, can you play it, can you add it, can you add it, can you bump up the spins? And sometimes getting those opinions, because sometimes it's like, this is a great song, but there's no format, but maybe it's right for CBC Radio 3. If you're folk, if you're roots, if you're blues, if you're jazz, CBC is your home. Jazz FM is your home. It's not on Virgin. It's not on Chum. It's not on Q. But for some reason, artists have a hard time understanding that, because they think, well, can you really compete right now with Kesha? Like, can you? And the answer is probably, maybe no. But the amazing thing about music is nobody asked for the Beatles. Nobody asked for the Sex Pistols. Nobody asked for accordions with Mumford and Sons. That was a mind-blowing thing in the music industry when Mumford and Sons, we were like, what is this? And who has information on this music director that forced them to play this song? But it worked. And it didn't work just because it was great. It worked because there was a story there. They had amazing known management. They had a booking agent all ready to go. They knew a year from now that they were going to open up for U2. They had the messages all in line saying, this is our plan. If you are an indie artist, you may not get played on Virgin, but you might get played on Hits FM's Indie Hour, which is just a little check in your little resume and on your bio. Then you use that to parlay that into something else.
And maybe we can go back here to Dre, artist perspective, in terms of building your story. Maybe you can share some of the things that you learned along your journey, or some of the steps that you've taken to develop that for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, for example, I just put out my first single, and I've been doing music full-time for 5 years now. So I think a big thing was also not rushing and knowing, okay, like, what steps do I need to take, like, kind of planning everything before I release the single. I think a lot of artists, they make their song and they're so excited that they forget to do the back-end work and prepare for, somewhat of a launch, create some sort of buzz for it. So, yeah, I just kind of prepared that. And I also want to just say about the radio thing, it sounds simple, but I think not enough artists, if you want to be on Virgin Radio, listen to Virgin Radio and know what they're, like, become familiar with it. I think too many people are like, oh, I want this to be on Virgin Radio, but it's like, like a hardcore rap song that they're just not going to play. So listening to the station is a big thing too.
Okay, Jonathan, if we come back to you, I'm going to just pivot a little bit, just again to building the story. One of the challenges that we find with a lot of independent artists is just managing all the work and the social media platforms to help build their story. Do you have any suggestions for artists, and just in terms of strategizing, planning content, and then executing and posting that content?
So I think it all comes down to, like, very similar to what Dre said, is like, let's say you have a single ready, you probably have at least a year amount of work in terms of marketing to get it ready if you really want to be able to hit the radio stations, if you want to be able to do that stuff. So the first thing is getting, it's pretty simple, getting out your calendar for like the next 12 months, and then planning out what you're going to be doing every single one of those months, and thinking, and obviously those things will change as things become more fluid, but it is really planning that out and putting, like, calendar dates, reminders, knowing when certain things are happening throughout the year and making sure that you're getting prepped for them. And then on top of that, if let's say you're going to like a radio station, or if you have an article coming out there and you're going to be giving them a link or something like that, making sure that you even do like the little things like tracking that URL to make sure that you know what you're getting from there and things like that. So there's a lot of different tools out there that you can use. Like for me, like some of the ones I love to use is I like different project management platforms. So like something like an Asana, like ASANA, is a great way of creating a to-do list that then you can schedule out, this is what I need to do, and it'll give you reminders about it. Something as simple as, using a Dropbox and having your folder management ready for when someone asks you for something, that you can be able to quickly respond for those type of things. So there's a lot of free tools out there that you can use to help you schedule and plan it out. So I would say a lot of it comes down to just knowing that you have a long road ahead once you have a single or something ready. So scheduling that out and just being very intentional about it.
And working as a PR representative, Eric, how do you coach artists through that situation in terms of content development, posting, scheduling, managing?
I'm a bunch of artists on social media. I won't tell you who, but her name is Taylor Swift. No, I'm only kidding. How to coach. It really just comes back to what I was saying earlier. You all lead very, very interesting lives. You just don't see it yet, or that you think that nobody really cares about what you do. There's you read articles and there's like the 80-20 rule where for every 8 posts you're allowed to promote yourself twice. But that kind of worked in the beginning, but now, just out of curiosity, everybody's got a Facebook fan page? Raise your hand. Everybody's on Twitter? Okay, keep those hands raised. How many people have more than 1,000 followers on Twitter or 1,000 fans on Facebook? Okay, so not that many of you. And probably it's going to be a real struggle because the way that the algorithm is worked, because both are free sites like Instagram is. So when something is a free platform, you are the ones that is being sold. So now Facebook, for instance, wants you to go buy ads and boost your post. So even if you post something brilliant that you think is amazing, only like 5 to 10% of your audience is seeing it because they want you to go and spend a couple of bucks. And really, it's only go and spend $2 or $3. You don't have to spend $50. If you have a $100 budget, it's better to spend $2 for the next 50 days and let it breathe rather than blowing it all on $50 all in one day. But the point is, though, that when you're trying to figure out what to post, you just post things that you think your audience is going to be doing. When I'm certain artists on social media, we do 7 things every single day. And they are, we promote 1 gig that's coming up. We promote 1 video, whether it's in the present or the past. We promote 1 like-minded story that's in the media to show that they are experts in their field. So if you play pop music, go find a story about another pop artist and say, this is who I like and this is who I am. We post a story, something about doing good, because all of the artists that I work with have to have a charitable component with it. So we give kind of words of advice. And then we post a fun fact about something, or ask a question. And it could be as goofy as the question of, I just ran out of things to watch on Netflix. What are you binging on? Or, a really popular one is, if I gave you a box of all the things that you lost in your life, what 1 item would you most want it to be in that box? Just really goofy questions like that. And we do that every single day to help the engagement. The only thing that you really truly know about the artist is when they're playing. But we get to promote everything else and that comes to the branding. So hopefully, you just have to think about what you'd like to see from an artist that you love and kind of do it yourself.
And then I was curious on Sabrina's perspective, when you're looking at artists and evaluating music, obviously you're listening to the music, you're thinking about your target audience, but then you're also looking if it's a new artist, an independent artist, it's a Canadian artist. Would you go to the extent of searching and pulling up their socials and taking a look? Is that important to a major broadcast chain like
More
Bell
often
Media?
than not, the music comes to us digitally now, and usually those links, you have attached them in your email or whatever. So we usually check them out. Why not? And it's always interesting because we do look at numbers and we look at where have you been. So even if you're here like in Ontario, did you do like an Ontario tour? Are you more so in Southern? Are you more so in Northern? Do you go down to the States? Have you recorded in the States? We look at that kind of stuff, and we look at, of course, if you're signed or if you're not signed, whether it's independent or if you have a manager yourself, we look at that. But it also comes down to if you message a music director and say, I'd really like to come in and play my song for you, like, do you have 15 minutes for me? They might think, okay, yeah, I can do that, and then put it into their schedule. And then their radio rep from Sony calls and says, I have an artist that I need to put in front of you. They want to do it at the exact same time. It goes to Sony. So it's kind of being aware of that as well, but also really focus like on your social media. And as Eric said, post on it, be active on it, and be active with the people that are engaging with you. If you feel like you have a small fan base, those are still your fans. You got to acknowledge them, and they're going to be with you through the long haul, right?
Dre, how do you manage it? What are some of the tips or ways that you stay organized and on top of your socials, just to share with everybody else?
First thing I want to say about even just boosting posts, I think people don't realize how lucky we have it that you can spend an ad $5 to $10 on Facebook. I think in the next few years, once the big boys, like all the big companies like Apple, realize that every time there's a commercial on TV, we all pick up our phones. It's going to be really hard to advertise for such a cheap price because they're going to start investing in all the ads on our phones. So now spending the $5 to $10 for
It's already happening.
yeah, it's already happening. And even in the last few months, it's getting more and more expensive. The algorithms are changing. So for me, even if you're going to spend $5, like Eric said, if you don't invest, you are a company. If you don't invest even a small amount, you're only going to reach 5 to 10%. Okay. And also, engaging your stories on Instagram. Instagram's the most used platform, or one of the most, anyways. I don't know exactly, Eric. What do you think's the most right now?
Well, Jonathan can.
Or Jonathan, yeah.
So yeah, it probably is Instagram. Just to tag on to what Eric and Drea said, when you don't have to spend a lot of money, and Eric is completely correct about that, but I think the important thing is something that's very tactical and very practical, and that is that if you are spending the money, let's say whether you're doing Instagram or Twitter, is that you're figuring out where your best return on investment is. So for example, let's say you are returning on, let's say you're doing Twitter, right? And your targeting is based on hashtags, correct? So it's important to track when you're posting which hashtags you're using, and then looking at your return on investment, that is your engagement, your retweets, and starting to figure out which one works. So if you find, let's say you research out, this is a horrible example, way too general, but let's say you were to do research on the hashtag of hashtag music, you'll be able to figure out from a website like tophashtags.com or whatever, how many people use that. And I would say that if you're going to spend $5 or $10, that you pick 1 or 2 hashtags, or ideally 1, put a little bit of money into it, see how that works with your post, and then try a different hashtag, and you start recording the results to see which one is giving you your best engagement, and then you start building up your list of hashtags that work for you when you're posting. And then on top of that, thinking about what type of posts you're giving, just like how Eric said, is that, I figure with your fans, it is a relationship. So if you have a friend, if all you're talking about is yourself the entire time and you're just trying to push your product on them, that's not really much of a relationship. So you always want to think about, how am I providing value to somebody? And if you think about it in terms of that, and then you put money behind that to get that out there of how you're providing value. So a post, for example, let's say you are a singer-songwriter who really cares about storytelling, and let's say you find a great article or a great video and you decide, hey, I'm going to give this out to my fans because I discovered it. You put a little bit of money behind it, you hashtag it properly, you do all that tracking, then you're going to start seeing what your return on investment is, and you've already put yourself ahead of the game because you're trying to give value instead of just trying to push something on somebody. So little things like that.
Dre, want to say something?
Yeah, and also for me, a big thing was Instagram direct messages. I think we're lucky that you can, reach out to people, and I took the time to, find other artists or people in the same genre that I believed in, and just reaching out to them, being like, hey, I dig your stuff. Do you guys want to exchange shout outs on stories? And little things like that. I mean, stories get a long reach. And I took the time and I did that a lot because we don't want to spend $1 million on ads and stuff like that. So that's a great organic way to, just send DMs, and don't be afraid to reach out to bigger people. I got, for example, my song was on Z103 because I reached out to one of the people who works with the organization and said hey, would like to bring you value. If there's anything I can do to collaborate, just let me know. And I think that's also important too when you're reaching out to people, to not say take my music, gimme sort of thing. It's important to offer your value and have some sort of leverage and be like, hey, I want to help, but also genuinely mean it, not just say it because you want something. Take the time to actually help.
Be human.
Be a person.
Yeah, and also too, while we all sit here and talk about social media, don't forget your own website. You own your website. You don't own a single thing of what you post on Instagram. You don't own anymore what's posted on Facebook. You don't own your content on Twitter. Anybody remember MySpace? Any one of these sites a year from now could be worthless. In fact, in Twitter, they haven't been able to figure out how to make any money, but they're making money off of your stuff. I can't tell you how many times we have started working on a promotion or PR for an artist, and they have 5 or 6 tour dates, and none of them are up on the artist's website. It's amazing. You own everything that's on your website. You don't just have to just click the logos of all the social media sites. Put a stream on there. It's really easy now to do a WordPress blog or a WordPress site, and it's pretty much free to list everything on there. Make sure it's up to date, because a lot of people that are in radio, they're not on Instagram. Not really. They're old, just like us. You know, they don't get it. They're definitely not on Snapchat, that's for sure. They still type in the band's name or the artist's name at Google and your website will come first. The other thing is that I speak to a lot of artists and they're kind of terrified because they're like, wow, I have to post on Snapchat and Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all of and SoundCloud and YouTube. You know where your audience is. I truly believe that. If you are playing folk music, don't even worry about Snapchat. If you play rock or metal, don't worry so much on Twitter because they're not on there. You know, you go to where your audience is. You know, as much as we can sit here and blab on for the next 2 hours about finding your audience, I think you all kind of really deep down inside know where your people are. Go to your people.
And just to play devil's advocate a little bit, Eric, I mean, a lot of independent artists, from what I've seen, aren't able to afford that website to start. So I was going to jump in and ask Jonathan, what are some maybe short-term bridge solutions if anybody is struggling from a financial standpoint to invest in their own website? And what should they be looking to expend actually on a website as a follow-up?
Well, there's two different lines of thought for musicians. There are for myself, I am on my own stuff. Like I'm usually on WordPress because I like having a little bit more control. That being said, if you need to, if the budget's low and you don't want to worry about maintenance on a site and you want it to look great, something like a Wix or something like that, it might cost you $9 or $10 a month, and they'll manage it, they'll host it. And the nice thing about that is you don't have to worry about, let's say these days, sites getting infected with viruses all the time. So something like that protects you from that, from the headache of your website going down. So I would always say that if you don't have the time and you're not necessarily a technical person and you don't want to have to worry about all that upkeep, I would always go with something like a Wix, or there's many different types of, or a Squarespace. There's different types of sites that you can use for that. And also outside of that, I was going to add is, who here uses Hootsuite? Is anybody? Okay. So one very practical tool about making your social media management a little bit easier is that we're human and things happen during the day, so it's really hard to keep up with it every day. So what I like to do in terms of that schedule is even taking, for myself, I take the first Thursday of every month and I do all my social media posts in Hootsuite. And what Hootsuite will do is it can connect to all your different social media platforms and you can schedule it out. So I will schedule out all my posts for the month, and this is being intentional and thinking ahead about what I want to post throughout the weeks, whether it's for myself or for the brands I work on, and I get it all ready for the first week, and then I just let it go. And then that takes the work out of trying to do it in little pieces. I just take 1 3-hour chunk one day of the month, and then I'm done.
Good strategy. There's a question in front here. Stand up, please, and your name.
I
Sounds
love
like a
college
Sabrina
radio.
question. That's a Sabrina question.
I love college radio. And that is yes, go to college radio for sure. Are you an indie artist? Yeah? Love it. I'll check out your music. Go to college campus stations because they are so willing to help. And that's what they're there for, right? College radio helped me so much become a broadcaster, and being on the college campus station, we wanted to be able to connect with what we were playing as well. So if there was somebody in the music department that had just made in the music course in college that had just made a record, they would walk down to the station and give it to us, and more likely than not we put it on there. And that's huge. It's exposure. Even if there's only 6,000 weekly listeners, that's still 6,000 weekly listeners. And some people do, they consistently tune into college radio because they like the indie roots and coming from their hometown or where they're from, right? So I would totally take advantage of it because you're so likely to get a yes. Have you reached out to campus stations?
Yes, I started to. One problem that I came across is some stations have different requirements.
Yeah.
So some will say, listen, we'll only take your music if you have 3 songs to give us. Others will say, we'll only take it if you have a physical copy to give us. So it's just trying to pick up the landscape.
Okay. Yeah, physical copies are they love those. But that's not hard to do, right? If you can just go burn it and then shove it in an envelope, maybe make it look pretty first, then shove it in an envelope and send it down to them, do it, right? And always, if you find that you're sending the email and they're not getting back to you, it's a college, walk in there. like just walk in with your CD, right? Like, what are they going to do? Tell you to leave? Then go to the person that's on air and be like, can you play this?
I would imagine Eric has a good perspective on this too.
Yeah, if you go to earshot-online.com, they compile all of the campus radio charts and into the campus radio chart. And if you go to earshot-online.com, under stations, it gives you a list of every single one of the 65 stations that submit their charts with the email addresses and the addresses. Every one of those people on that list, the music director, always gets a physical copy. But the shows are amazingly, brilliantly crazy because they all walk in with a thumb drive now and they play what they want because there's no real programming to be had. So each of those campus radio stations, for the most part, not only list the shows, but list the host name and the email address to contact. Whenever we have a new release, we're hitting up not only the music director, but those specific shows. So if you're jazz, they'll list all the jazz programming there. When you're touring in that market, I always more, probably with the same weight as CTV's morning show in Ottawa, I will go after a campus radio show on CKCU because that's where I know that the listeners of tomorrow are going to be. You go through that campus radio list of the top 50, if you haven't, and you'll think, wow, this is where all these bands that I've heard of that never get on the radio, all the pitchfork type artists are there. All the arts and crafts labeled artists are there. Broken Social Scene, if you eliminate The Edge and Indie 88, get very little airplay, but they're massive on campus radio. And it's where, you know what too? It's so funny. How you treat these people will always come back to you. Just because they're on a campus radio show at 3 o'clock in the morning, don't treat them with any less respect than if they were the most popular person on the campus, because you never know where these people are going to end up 3 years from now.
Well, it's a fact, and I will share an example if you don't mind very quickly. I was working for a record company 20 years ago, and I was here in Hamilton taking a band into CFMU in McMaster, and I met a program director, I can't remember if he was program or music director, by the name of Jeff Remedios. And to Eric's point, that man is now the president of Universal Music. So yes, I think the other key, not so much the airplay. I have not seen airplay change the life of anybody from a campus radio standpoint. But people that you meet, the connections, these are people who are music, they're in the scene, they're influencers. So it's the relationships, the connections, because they're going to end up being promoters or working at labels or working like radio stations like Sabrina that could have influence on your career down the road. So I just wanted to add that. Now we're running out of time. Are there any other questions out there? I want to make sure we hit everybody. Yes, in the front.
Changing music again. I just wanted to know about the frequency of giving out free songs on SoundCloud. What you guys think of that? How to funnel it back to automated marketing on my website.
Don't worry about getting paid. Worry about being ignored. You're not going to get paid. None of you, I would say in looking at the audience, maybe two of you are going to make more than $50,000 a year in your music. It's just the way it is. It's just the absolute dead truth with the way that the music industry is right now, where you're making, for every million streams right now on Spotify, you make $4,100. Very few of you are going to hit over $1 million. On YouTube, it's maybe a couple $100 more. But right now, every stream is worth 0.00004 cents. Don't worry about getting paid. Worry about being ignored. So
Yeah.
get your
That
music
said, it
out
doesn't
there
hurt
on
to
all
get
the
paid.
platforms.
That said, it doesn't hurt to start to get paid. And SoundCloud, why would you do that?
That's
You
what I
should
was
be
gonna
pushing
say.
to the streaming
Yeah.
platforms. At least you're going to start to get some pay. Not that you're getting nothing from SoundCloud. Okay, there's a question in the back. Oh, one over here. Yes. Right here in the red.
They will. The CD Baby, The Orchard, CD Now, all of those sites where you can pay $10 a month to get your music up on iTunes and various places are great. They rarely screw up. I've got a ton of artists that have their stuff through there. The only knock against them, and it's not even a knock because it's just something they don't do, they're not interested in the quality of the music. They're not interested in promoting you. They're interested in the quantity of bands and artists that they can get to sign up for $10. So as long as your stuff is up there, the job is up to you. But quite frankly, unless you are the biggest priority at Universal Music Canada, Sony, or Warner, you're going to need to do all the promoting yourself anyway, for the most part. But all of those are fine, They go 3 weeks in advance. I've never heard of a screw up. The one thing that you have to keep in mind, and I tell everybody this just to make sure, that if you're going to release your music on, let's say for mathematical sake, Friday, November the 1st, make sure that you put up your stuff maybe 2 or 3 days before and just let it sit. Don't do anything, don't promote it, keep your eye on that street date. The reason why you want to go maybe a day or two in advance is just in case if anything screws up, that they put the wrong song title, they have a backlog, there's a fire in their room with the server, you still have that 48-hour window to take care of any potential problems. But I love all that stuff, and I'm so happy that they're around.
And there was a question back over here I saw. Still have, yeah, right there. You asked before.
You go. That was my thought too.
I work with some pretty big artists that they're all taken care of. I love working smaller independent artists. The thing that I look for is really two things. I think that they need to be active on social media, just a little bit. Because I think that as much as I think a little bit of social media is a little bit of smoke and mirrors, I really need for them to understand that they need to be active, because we're all in this big bubble saying that social media is important, so we all have to do it. The other thing I'm looking for is if you play rock, folk, not necessarily hip hop, jazz, and blues, I'm really looking for you to tour. This country is a big, big country with not a lot of people in it. The population of Canada fits in the tri-state area, Boston, New York, and New Jersey. This is a tough country to play, but this country has been very, very kind to those that are willing to get in a van and have no plan B and tough it out and go coast to coast to coast and play. If you're Dre, though, you can get away with making an amazing, amazing song in your basement and have it out there. You look at who's made it in terms of Canada, like a Ruth B. or Dan Talevsky or even Dre. They didn't need to tour. Their audience isn't looking for them to play live. But if you're a rock band, yeah, man, you need to go out in a van and play to 2 people and a bartender and their dog.
Jonathan has a comment he wants to add.
So on the outside, like just to answer your question on the artist perspective, like for me, outside of being an artist, I also work as a songwriter, and I actually studied at Berkeley for commercial songwriting. And in our courses, like because we are working in contemporary music, like we are hitting our courses at 30 seconds or 45 seconds. And and we find like we're paying attention to what's on radio. We're paying attention to when courses, because it used to be 10 years ago, you could make your course come in at a minute or maybe 50 seconds. Today with let's say if we're talking about general pop music, courses are hitting at around 30 seconds. So producers and people like that and labels, we're looking for that especially when I'm working with artists on that side of things, like we find it's important, at least from the songwriter's perspective. So we're always thinking about that.
Because our attention spans are so small. We want the chorus to come in at 30 seconds.
Yeah, you can thank Max Martin for that. So,
And I also think if you're putting up a YouTube video, for example, if you are marketing that with Google AdWords, you could skip the ad after 5 seconds. So you actually have to be able to make people not skip your ad within 5 seconds. So I think that's also why a 30-second instrumental intro is not the best thing if you're going for like radio or a YouTube video to kind of take off.
I have a question. Is anybody hungry?
There is one. While he's doing, there is one quick thing I do want to talk about in terms of SoundCloud. If you are marketing on SoundCloud and things like that, usually what takes off well is anything around hip hop or EDM. And the one thing about that is not to put all your eggs in one basket, especially for SoundCloud, just because of if you look in the news and where they're at, they are consistently losing money. So right now, there's a whole talk in the industry, not just there, but in the tech industry, of whether they're going to go under. So it's important to diversify the channels you're on. So don't put all your stuff on SoundCloud because it might go the way of MySpace. So you got to be careful about that kind of stuff, about the platforms. Like watch for the big news items and see like how how much it should be in your plan, especially
One
if they're not
final
gonna be
question in the back. Last question.
Yeah, I have one question about radio play again. I just really would like to know how realistic it is that if an artist sends a CD to a radio station and targeted, I'm talking about targeted sending, not jazz artists sending a CD to Virgin Records, that the program does A, who do you send it to? How do you find the person to send it to? Will it actually be listened to? And I'm talking from a bit of experience. Now, I worked in the recording industry for many years on the, record industry side. And have been panels, and we would say, yes, send us the music, we would love to hear your music, because we all try to be up about artists. And I'm a musician myself as well. But the reality of things was that unless, I worked at the EMI Records, unless the CD was sent to us by a lawyer or by someone we knew, it wouldn't even be opened. So I would like to have the real honest.
Yeah.
Sabrina.
So if
And just to finish this,
Yeah.
because I just did a CD myself, and I really want to know, and again, I'm experienced, but it's a new world. I'm a dinosaur in the music industry. How do I do it? How do I get my music into the right hands? Does it actually make sense for me to package them up as we used to do at Blue Note and send them to all people? Or should I just, what should I do? Or should I not?
Okay, let's let Sabrina answer the question now. Sabrina, go ahead.
So if you send your music to a radio host on the station, if you send it to the program director, if you send it to promotions, it all gets forwarded to the music director. So that's first step there. For who you want to send it to is the music director. You wouldn't believe when the mail guy comes around every morning the amount of stacks of CDs that we still get. Like, people still do the physical copy and they still get sent in and they don't go in the trash. Like, they are there. And you know what? It's true. It comes down to a matter of time. Is there a break in the day where the music director feels like they can throw on 3 different CDs and listen to the music and send back feedback or actually consider it for the station? It really depends on the amount of time. Eric, what do you think on that?
I didn't hear all of the question, but I'm going to kind of go based on that. I think it's very, very easy now to reach out to or to find where these gatekeepers at radio exist. I don't think they have a lot of time for you. If you take a look at what's being played on a rock station in Vancouver, it's the same thing of what's being played in Toronto, in Halifax, in Montreal, in Ottawa, in Calgary. It's 3 or 4 major ownerships of radio stations, and they tend to play what's hot. Their job is really not to help you. It's not. Their job is to sell advertising. I remember the day I was 16, the day that I realized that radio's invention was to sell advertising. It blew me away and depressed me to no end because I thought, oh, what about all these people? The content is the host and the music designed to keep people on your station so you can listen to the ads. So you have to help them choose you. If they have no reason to play you, they will not play you. They don't give out favors, except for the Bell Emerging Artist Program or these various programs that are existing that the radio stations have to have in order to appease the CRTC and the industry at large. And they pick one artist a month and they all get behind that artist, and that's an amazing program. But you are in competition with potentially, I don't know, I would say 15, 30 artists that are backed by a pretty high-end radio tracker. Maybe they have management. Maybe they already have a record label. But things don't really, it's the rare case that the industry is taken by surprise with somebody who mails in a track. That's what campus radio is for.
Yeah,
that's where you build up your story.
And you should identify the radio that you're targeting. So the conversation here is very much on commercial radio, the Bells and the New Cabs and the Chorus. But don't forget there's CBC, there's College Campus, there's Pay Audio, there's online. There's lots of places where you can go. You have to be able to identify what radio you're actually targeting. And to that, I have to wrap up here. We're over time. So we want to thank everybody for coming out on a Saturday morning to be here today. We are going to be outside kind of meeting and mingling. There's food and there's drink for everybody outside. Want to thank our panel, Eric Alper, Sabrina Fave, Jonathan Lee, and Dre Pao for their expertise. How about a round of applause for everybody there?